Judge Vanessa Mitchell froze as first-class flight attendant Bradley Winters screamed in her face. "You don't belong here!" The entire cabin fell silent. 20 years on the federal bench hadn't prepared her for this humiliation. Her boarding pass clearly showed seat 2A. As security approached, Vanessa's trembling fingers found her phone. One call. That's all it would take. Little did she know, this wasn't just about a seat mix-up. A coordinated campaign to destroy her career had just begun, and airline CEO Richard Coleman was about to become an unexpected player. Would she survive what was coming? Before I continue this shocking story, let me know where you're watching from. If you believe in justice and standing up against discrimination, hit that like button and subscribe to stay updated on more eye-opening stories like this one. Judge Vanessa Mitchell had never imagined her life would take such a dramatic turn on a routine flight to Phoenix. At 48 years old, she had overcome countless obstacles to become one of the most respected federal judges in Michigan history. Growing up in a working-class neighborhood in Detroit, Vanessa had watched her single mother work 3 jobs to put her through college. The lessons of perseverance and dignity had carried her through law school at Harvard, where she graduated, at the top of her class despite facing constant microaggressions and doubts about her abilities. 20 years ago, she had made history as the youngest black female federal judge in Michigan, earning a reputation for fairness, sharp legal mind, and zero tolerance for discrimination in her courtroom. Today she was headed to Phoenix for what could be the most significant case of her career. A high-profile corporate corruption trial involving Tech Global Industries, a tech giant accused of massive financial fraud that had wiped out the retirement savings of thousands of workers. After spending weeks preparing for this complex case, reviewing thousands of pages of evidence, Vanessa was exhausted, but determined to ensure justice would be served. As she boarded the flight, she looked forward to 5 hours of uninterrupted time to review her notes one final time before landing. The moment she stepped onto the plane, Vanessa noticed flight attendant Bradley Winters giving her a peculiar look as she made her way toward the first-class cabin. Her boarding pass clearly indicated seat 2A, a window seat she had specifically requested. As she approached her row, Bradley stepped directly in her path, his welcoming smile instantly transforming into a tight-lipped stare. "Excuse me, ma'am, economy boarding is not until later," he said loudly enough for nearby passengers to hear. Vanessa maintained her composure, having dealt with similar assumptions throughout her career. "I understand, but I have a first-class ticket," she replied calmly, extending her boarding pass. Bradley barely glanced at it before responding, "There must be some mistake. These seats are reserved for our premium customers." The emphasis on premium wasn't subtle. Vanessa took a deep breath and pointed to her seat assignment. "As you can see, I'm in seat 2A, my boarding pass and ID match." Bradley snatched the boarding pass from her hand and scrutinized it with exaggerated care, then looked at her with open suspicion. "How exactly did you get this seat? First-class upgrade promotions are only for our frequent flyers." Several passengers had stopped to watch the interaction, some pulling out phones to record. Feeling the weight of their stares, Vanessa maintained her professional demeanor. "I purchased this ticket directly through your website. I'm a platinum member with your airline. Now if you'll excuse me." She attempted to move past him, but Bradley stepped sideways, blocking her path again. "I need to verify this. These seats cost thousands of dollars." Vanessa felt her cheeks burning with humiliation as other flight attendants nearby watched but did nothing to intervene. A white businessman who had boarded just before her was already comfortably settled in first class, having been greeted warmly by this same attendant. "Sir, I've been flying with this airline for 15 years. I'm heading to Phoenix for work and I need to prepare during this flight. Please allow me to take my seat." Bradley's face hardened. "Work? What kind of work would that be?" The implication in his tone was unmistakable. Before Vanessa could respond, he continued, "I'll need to check with my supervisor. In the meantime, perhaps you should wait in economy." That was when Vanessa's professional reserve began to crack. "I will not be moving to economy. I paid for this seat, I have the proper documentation, and your treatment is completely inappropriate." Bradley's eyes narrowed as his voice rose. "You're being difficult." This is a simple verification process. Then came the moment that would soon be seen by millions online. As Vanessa attempted once more to reach her assigned seat, Bradley stepped directly in front of her and shouted, "You don't belong here. People like you are always trying to game the system." The cabin fell silent. Every eye was on them. A nearby passenger gasped. For 20 seconds that felt like an eternity. Vanessa stood frozen, the weight of decades of similar moments crushing down on her. Then, with trembling fingers, she reached for her phone. There was one person she could call who might actually do something about this. Richard Coleman, the CEO of Airlines of America, had been her law school classmate. They hadn't spoken in years, but she still had his personal number. As airline security approached, summoned by Bradley, Vanessa pressed call. Little did she know that this wasn't a random incident of discrimination. Her upcoming case against Tech Global Industries had set powerful forces in motion, and Bradley Winters was just the first piece in an elaborate plan to destroy her credibility before she could expose a massive corporate conspiracy. The next 30 minutes unfolded like a nightmare in slow motion. After Vanessa's call went to Richard Coleman's voicemail, she left a brief, composed message explaining the situation. Meanwhile, a supervisor had been called to the scene and, after reviewing her ticket, confirmed that yes, Judge Mitchell was indeed assigned to seat 2A. Though the supervisor apologized, the damage was done. Dozens of passengers had witnessed her humiliation, and Bradley's accusations hung in the air like poison. During the flight, Bradley continued his campaign of passive-aggressive behavior. When serving drinks to first-class passengers, he accidentally spilled water on Vanessa's case notes. When she requested a blanket, he claimed they had run out, only to provide one to the passenger seated beside her moments later. The older white woman in seat 2B leaned over and whispered, "I saw what happened. That was terrible. Would you like me to file a complaint as a witness?" Several other passengers offered similar support, yet Vanessa also noticed the disapproving glances from others who seemed to have concluded she was the problem. One man muttered audibly about playing the race card to another passenger. 5 hours of tension finally ended when they landed in Phoenix. As passengers disembarked, Vanessa checked her phone and was shocked to find hundreds of notifications. The incident had already gone viral. Someone had uploaded a partial video clip, showing only her final exchange with Bradley, carefully edited to remove his initial provocations. The caption read, "Entitled Judge Threatens Airline Staff for Not Getting Special Treatment." Her heart sank as she scrolled through comments calling her another angry black woman and questioning her judicial temperament. One comment particularly stung. If this is how she acts in public, imagine how biased she must be on the bench. Major news outlets had already picked up the story, with misleading headlines suggesting she had demanded special treatment and threatened staff with her position. As Vanessa exited the jet bridge, still reeling from the online onslaught, she spotted a tall, distinguished man in an impeccable suit waiting by the gate, flanked by airline executives who looked deeply concerned. Richard Coleman, CEO of Airlines of America, had received her message and flown in from Chicago on a private jet. "Judge Mitchell," he said, extending his hand, "I cannot express how deeply sorry I am for what happened today." The surrounding passengers stopped to stare as Richard made a public show of contrition. "I've reviewed the security footage from the plane. What happened to you was inexcusable, and I promise you that immediate action will be taken." For a brief moment, Vanessa felt vindicated. Richard's presence and public acknowledgement seemed to signal that justice would be swift. Airport staff quickly ushered them to a private lounge where Richard continued, "Bradley Winters has been suspended pending a full investigation. We have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination of any kind." Just as Vanessa began to feel the tension leaving her body, Richard's assistant interrupted with a tablet displaying breaking news. Bradley Winters had given an exclusive interview to a national network, claiming that Judge Mitchell had threatened him with her judicial power and demanded preferential treatment because of her position. "She told me she could have me fired with one phone call," Bradley stated in the interview, his eyes welling with tears. "Then she made that call right in front of me." The airline's PR team had already released a carefully worded statement that somehow managed to support both sides. Airlines of America takes all allegations seriously, both from our valued customer Judge Mitchell and our dedicated employee. We are conducting a thorough investigation and will take appropriate action based on our findings. Vanessa felt the momentary relief evaporate. Richard's expression had subtly shifted from apologetic to calculating. "Judge, I notice you're in Phoenix for the Tech Global Industries case," he said casually. "That's quite a high-profile matter." Something in his tone made Vanessa's instincts flare. How did he know about her case assignment? It hadn't been widely publicized yet. Before she could probe further, Richard's phone rang. After a brief conversation, his demeanor changed completely. "I need to handle something. My team will ensure you reach your hotel safely." As he departed, Vanessa couldn't shake the feeling that something much larger than a flight attendant's prejudice was unfolding around her. Looking at the continuing stream of notifications on her phone, she realized that this incident might be connected to her upcoming case in ways she couldn't yet understand. The question was, who would benefit from publicly discrediting a federal judge just before a major corporate corruption trial? Wow, can you believe what just happened to Judge Mitchell? If you think Bradley Winter's behavior was totally unacceptable and racist, comment number 1 below. How would you feel if you were treated this way despite having a valid ticket? Hit that like button if you think the airline CEO is acting suspicious with that sudden change in attitude. And don't forget to subscribe for updates on what happens next in this shocking story. Is this really just about a seating dispute? Or is there something more sinister connecting the airline incident to Judge Mitchell's high-profile case against Tech Global Industries? What do you think the CEO knows that he's not telling her? Stay tuned to find out how deep this conspiracy really goes. Dawn broke over Phoenix with an ominous red glow that seemed fitting for what awaited Judge Vanessa Mitchell. As her driver approached the federal courthouse, she spotted them immediately. A small but vocal group of protesters lined the entrance, some holding signs with enlarged screenshots from the viral video. "Biased judge and no special treatment," read the most prominent placards. Vanessa took a deep breath, straightened her robe in the back seat, and prepared to face this unexpected gauntlet. As she exited the vehicle, a few reporters rushed forward with microphones and cameras. "Judge Mitchell, do you think your behavior on that flight demonstrates judicial temperament?" one shouted. "Will you be recusing yourself from the Tech Global case given your obvious bias?" called another. Ignoring them with practiced dignity, Vanessa ascended the courthouse steps. Inside, her law clerk Marcus Washington waited with obvious concern etched across his young face. Marcus had been with her for 2 years, an exceptionally bright Harvard Law graduate who reminded Vanessa of herself at his age. "Judge, are you okay? I saw the videos online, but they don't show what really happened, do they?" he asked, falling into step beside her as they walked toward her chambers. "No, Marcus, they don't," she replied, keeping her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "Someone carefully edited that footage to make me look like the aggressor. But I can't focus on that right now. We have the Tech Global case opening today." Marcus nodded but looked unconvinced. "The defense filed a motion this morning. I think you should see it before we enter the courtroom." He handed her a legal document that made her stop in her tracks. Tech Global's attorneys were formally requesting her recusal from the case, citing the airline incident as evidence of erratic behavior and inability to maintain judicial composure. The motion included printed screenshots of social media posts questioning her temperament. "This is ridiculous," Vanessa muttered. "They can't honestly believe this will work." But as she entered the courtroom an hour later, the tension was palpable. The gallery was packed with reporters and spectators, many openly staring at her with curiosity or judgment. At the defense table, Tech Global's lead attorney Lawrence Phillips rose with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Your Honor, before we proceed, I believe the court should address our motion for recusal in light of recent events that call into question the court's impartiality." Vanessa met his gaze steadily. "Mr. Phillips, I have reviewed your motion and find it without merit. Yesterday's incident has no bearing on my ability to preside fairly over these proceedings. Motion denied. Now, are you prepared to make your opening statement, or shall we waste more of the court's time?" Phillips appeared momentarily taken aback by her directness, but quickly recovered. "We're prepared, Your Honor, though we note our objection for the record." As the trial proceeded through opening statements, Vanessa maintained absolute professionalism, yet she couldn't help noticing the subtle ways Phillips referenced the incident in his rhetoric. When discussing Tech Global's alleged victims, he emphasized how appearances can be deceiving and that hasty judgments often lead to injustice. The implications were clear to everyone in the courtroom. By mid-afternoon, Vanessa was mentally exhausted but satisfied that the first day had gone. As well as could be expected under the circumstances, she returned to her hotel room only to find a plain white envelope that had been slipped under her door. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a message composed of letters cut from magazines. "Step down from the case or the next video will destroy you." A chill ran down her spine as she immediately called hotel security. They reviewed hallway camera footage but found nothing unusual, just regular housekeeping staff and guests. Later that evening, Vanessa received a call from the clerk of the Judicial Ethics Committee. "Judge Mitchell, I regret to inform you that we've received 17 formal complaints about your conduct in the last 24 hours. The committee is obligated to open an investigation." Vanessa sank onto the edge of her bed. 17 complaints? That's unprecedented. "Yes, it is unusual," the clerk admitted. "Most of them cite the airline incident and question your judicial temperament. Given the high-profile nature of your current case, the committee felt it necessary to inform you immediately." No sooner had she ended that call when her phone rang again. This time it was Chief Judge Harold Blackwell, her supervisor and mentor. "Vanessa, I'm calling as a friend first, court administrator second. These ethics complaints are just the beginning. I'm hearing whispers that certain interests want you off this case, and they're willing to go to extraordinary lengths to make it happen. Harold, you know me. I can't step down just because someone is trying to intimidate me. That would undermine everything the justice system stands for." His sigh was heavy with concern. "I thought you'd say that. Just be careful. This Tech Global case has bigger players involved than you might realize." After ending the call, Vanessa began systematically reviewing her case notes, determined not to let these distractions affect her work. Around midnight, a breaking news alert popped up on her tablet. The story made her blood run cold. Exclusive. Judge in Tech Global case has history of racial grievances. The article quoted anonymous court insiders, claiming she had frequently played the race card throughout her career to advance professionally. As she read further, something clicked. The airline, Tech Global. There had to be a connection. A quick search revealed what she suspected. Airlines of America shared 3 major shareholders with Tech Global Industries. This wasn't random harassment. It was a coordinated effort to force her off the case. Just as this realization hit, she heard a noise at her door. Before she could investigate, the hotel room phone rang. "Judge Mitchell, this is front desk security. We've detected a breach on your floor. Please lock your door and stay inside until we clear the area." Minutes later, when security gave the all clear, Vanessa discovered her briefcase had been skillfully opened and her most critical case notes were missing. Her phone rang again. It was Richard Coleman. "Judge, I've been doing some digging since our meeting. Bradley Winters isn't just any flight attendant. He has connections to several corporate security firms, including one frequently employed by Tech Global Industries. I think you're being targeted, and I'm afraid this is much bigger than an airline incident." Despite the theft of her notes and the growing pressure, Judge Vanessa Mitchell entered the courtroom the next morning with unwavering determination. The prosecution was presenting key evidence showing how Tech Global Industries had systematically falsified financial reports while executives quietly sold off millions in stock before the company's value plummeted. From the witness stand, a former Tech Global accountant detailed elaborate schemes designed to mislead investors and federal regulators. During cross-examination, defense attorney Lawrence Phillips repeatedly tried to undermine the witness's credibility by suggesting personal grudges against the company. Vanessa noticed Phillips would occasionally glance her way after particularly aggressive questioning, as if gauging her reaction. By the lunch recess, Marcus pulled her aside with disturbing news. "Judge, someone's been accessing your judicial computer network account. The IT department flagged unusual login patterns from multiple locations simultaneously. "That's impossible," Vanessa replied. "I have two-factor authentication on everything." They think it might be an inside job, someone with administrative access to the system. As they spoke, Vanessa's phone chimed with notifications. Opening her social media accounts, she found herself tagged in hundreds of posts containing private information from past cases, personal photos from her college years, and even confidential judicial deliberations that should have been impossible to access. "They've hacked everything," she whispered, scrolling through the damage. "My reputation, my career, my privacy, all exposed and manipulated." One post particularly stood out, an audio clip purportedly from the airline incident. In it, a voice, similar to hers, could be heard saying, "Do you know who I am? One call and you're finished. I don't care about your policies." The recording was clearly fabricated or heavily edited, but it sounded convincing enough to the average listener. News outlets were already reporting on the new evidence of her alleged misconduct. That afternoon, as the trial continued, Vanessa received a formal notice that the Judicial Ethics Committee had escalated their investigation and scheduled an emergency hearing for the following week. Several committee members had already made public statements suggesting the seriousness of the allegations warranted immediate action, possibly including temporary removal from the bench. Back at her hotel that evening, Vanessa felt increasingly isolated. Richard Coleman had stopped returning her calls, and several colleagues who had initially expressed support were now distancing themselves. While reviewing replacement case notes that Marcus had helped her reconstruct, Vanessa noticed a small blinking light reflected in her water glass. Carefully scanning the room without changing her expression, she spotted it. A tiny camera hidden in the smoke detector directly above her work area. Someone was watching her every move, monitoring her case preparation in real time. Instead of removing it, she continued working as if nothing was wrong, but shifted to reviewing irrelevant documents while considering her next move. Around midnight, Marcus called with his voice barely above a whisper. "Judge, I found something. Bradley Winters isn't just connected to corporate security firms. 3 years ago, he worked directly for Victor Reynolds, the CEO of Tech Global, as part of his private household staff. This goes deeper than we thought. Marcus, be careful who you share this with. I found surveillance equipment in my hotel room. We're being watched." "There's more," Marcus continued. "I've been looking into Airlines of America's corporate structure. Richard Coleman became CEO 2 years ago after a leveraged buyout was financed primarily by Quantum Investments, which is a subsidiary of, let me guess, Tech Global Industries," Vanessa finished. "Not directly, but close. Quantum is owned by Alexander Pierce, who happens to be Victor Reynolds' brother-in-law and Tech Global's board chairman. Coleman likely answers to Pierce." The pie. Next morning, Vanessa found 2 unmarked security personnel waiting outside her hotel room door. "Judge Mitchell, Mr. Coleman sent us to provide protection given the, security concerns." Their credentials seemed legitimate, but Vanessa couldn't shake the feeling they were there to monitor rather than protect her. As she prepared to leave, for court, an unexpected visitor arrived. A woman in her early 40s with intense eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor flashed an FBI badge. "Judge Mitchell, I'm Special Agent Diana Lopez. We need to speak privately." Once they were alone, Agent Lopez revealed startling information. The Bureau has been investigating a pattern of judicial interference across multiple districts. We believe Tech Global Industries and several other major corporations have been systematically identifying and neutralizing judges who might rule against their interests. Your case triggered all the warning signs in our monitoring system. So the airline incident was almost certainly orchestrated. Bradley Winters has connections to a private intelligence firm that specializes in character assassination and evidence fabrication. We've been building a case against them for months. Agent Lopez showed Vanessa photos of Bradley meeting with a man she identified as James Morrison, Tech Global's head of special projects, 3 days before her flight. "They're not just trying to force you off this case, Judge Mitchell. Based on the escalation pattern we've seen, they may attempt to permanently neutralize you if their current methods fail." The implications of permanently neutralize hung heavily in the air. "What exactly are you suggesting, Agent Lopez?" I'm suggesting you need to be extremely careful. We can provide some protection, but my investigation is still unofficial. There are powerful people who would shut it down if they knew I was here. As she drove to the courthouse with her security detail, Vanessa noticed a black SUV following at a consistent distance. When her driver took an unusual turn to test the tail, the SUV smoothly adjusted course to maintain pursuit. At a four-way stop, a delivery truck suddenly accelerated from the cross street, heading directly toward her vehicle. Her driver swerved violently, missing the truck by inches before skillfully regaining control. "That was no accident," the driver muttered, his hand moving inside his jacket where Vanessa glimpsed a holstered weapon. By the time police arrived, the truck had disappeared, and there were no witnesses willing to confirm what had happened. Later that day, during court proceedings, Vanessa received a note that Richard Coleman was waiting to speak with her in chambers during the next recess. When she found him there, his typically confident demeanor had been replaced with obvious anxiety. "Judge Mitchell, someone tried to access my family's home last night. My wife found this under our door." He handed her a note with the same magazine cutout letters as the one she had received. "Control the judge or your family pays the price." Richard's hands trembled slightly. "I want to help you, but I need to protect my family. These people, they're everywhere. The airline, the media, law enforcement. I don't know who to trust anymore." Before he could elaborate, Vanessa's phone chimed with a news alert. Bradley Winters had scheduled a primetime interview to tell the full story about their confrontation. The network was promoting shocking new revelations about Judge Mitchell's character and fitness for the bench. As Richard left, Vanessa couldn't help wondering if his visit had been genuine concern or part of an elaborate performance designed to further manipulate her. The walls were closing in, the conspiracy deepening with each passing hour, and she was increasingly uncertain who, if anyone, she could trust. The morning started with an unexpected break in Judge Vanessa Mitchell's favor. As she prepared for another challenging day in court, her phone exploded with notifications. Overnight, someone had anonymously uploaded the complete, unedited security footage from the flight to multiple social media platforms. The full video showed exactly what had happened from the moment she stepped on the plane, capturing Bradley Winters' unprovoked hostility, his deliberate attempts to humiliate her, and his final explosive outburst. Most importantly, it clearly showed Vanessa remaining composed and professional throughout the entire confrontation, never once threatening him with her position or making any of the statements he had claimed. Public opinion began shifting almost immediately. News networks that had previously condemned her now featured panelists analyzing the disturbing racial undertones of the incident. Social media hashtags like "Justice for Judge Mitchell" and "Bradley Winters is a racist" began trending nationally. By mid-morning, Airlines of America issued a new statement. "After reviewing complete footage of the incident involving Judge Mitchell, we have suspended flight attendant Bradley Winters pending further investigation. We sincerely apologize to Judge Mitchell and reaffirm our commitment to treating all passengers with dignity and respect regardless of race, gender, or occupation." Vanessa allowed herself a moment of cautious relief as she entered the courtroom. The gallery seemed different today, the hostile stares replaced with expressions of sympathy or admiration. Even Lawrence Phillips, Tech Global's attorney, appeared less confident as he approached the bench before proceedings began. "Your Honor, in light of recent developments, we are withdrawing our motion for recusal." His voice carried a hint of resignation. "We acknowledge that external factors may have unduly influenced our previous position." The trial proceeded with the prosecution presenting damning evidence against Tech Global. A former executive testified about systematic fraud orchestrated by CEO Victor Reynolds, detailing how the company had manipulated data to hide massive losses while executives cashed out their stock options before the inevitable crash that wiped out ordinary investors' savings. Vanessa noticed jurors taking detailed notes, their expressions hardening as the scope of Tech Global's corruption became clear. During a brief recess, Marcus approached with a smile. "Judge, the Judicial Ethics Committee has suspended their investigation pending review of the new video evidence. 3 committee members have already issued statements supporting you." For the first time in days, Vanessa felt the weight on her shoulders lighten. By late afternoon, she received word that Bradley Winters had been officially terminated from Airlines of America. The news came directly from Richard Coleman, who called to personally inform her before the public announcement. "Justice is being served, Judge Mitchell," he said, sounding genuinely relieved. "I want you to know that I've ordered a complete investigation into how this happened. We've already identified several staff members who failed to intervene during the incident, and appropriate action is being taken." That evening, Marcus suggested a celebratory dinner at a small restaurant away from the main hotel district. "You deserve at least one moment to breathe, Judge. The tide is turning in your favor." Richard Coleman unexpectedly joined them, having apparently been invited by Marcus. Over appetizers, Richard was charm personified, apologizing profusely for his company's handling of the situation. "I've been doing a complete review of our diversity policies," he explained. "This incident has exposed serious flaws in our training and corporate culture, and I'm committed to making substantial changes." For the first time in days, Vanessa allowed herself to relax slightly, even managing a genuine laugh when Marcus recounted a lighthearted story from their early days working together. The respite was short-lived. As they waited for dessert, Vanessa's phone chimed with a text from an unknown number. When she opened it, she found a video showing her brother, James, walking his dog in Detroit, filmed clearly by someone following him at a distance. The message beneath read, "We can reach anyone you care about, anytime." She struggled to maintain her composure, not wanting to alert Richard or Marcus to this new threat. Moments later, Richard's assistant approached their table with an urgent message. Richard checked his phone, his expression instantly transforming. "I apologize, but I need to handle an emergency business situation immediately." He threw down cash for the bill. "Please enjoy the rest of your evening." His abrupt departure left an uncomfortable silence at the table. Marcus leaned forward. "Judge, is everything okay? You look pale." Before she could answer, her own phone rang with a call from the hotel. "Judge Mitchell, this is security. We're required to inform you that there was an incident involving your room. The situation is contained now, but we recommend you return as soon as possible." When they arrived at the hotel, Vanessa found her room completely ransacked. Clothes had been torn from hangers, furniture overturned, and even the bathroom tiles had been pried from the wall. Most disturbingly, someone had spray-painted "liar" in red across the hotel room mirror. The security manager appeared genuinely distressed. "Our cameras somehow went offline for 18 minutes. We're reviewing footage from other floors to identify any suspicious individuals." As hotel staff worked to secure her a new room, Vanessa scrolled through news alerts on her phone. Her blood froze as she read the latest headline. "Breaking. Bradley Winters found dead. Judge Mitchell's call log shows contact on night of death." The article claimed police had discovered Bradley's body in his apartment with evidence suggesting foul play, and anonymous sources alleged that Vanessa's phone had connected to a tower near his residence hours before his estimated time of death. The temporary victory had been nothing but a setup for an even more devastating attack. Can you believe the roller coaster Judge Mitchell is experiencing? Comment number 1 if you felt relieved when the unedited video finally surfaced. Were you suspicious of Richard Coleman's sudden dinner appearance and convenient emergency business? Drop a like if you saw that betrayal coming. And who do you think released the full video? Could there be someone secretly helping Judge Mitchell behind the scenes? Subscribe now to find out who might be the hidden ally in this conspiracy. Things are getting dangerous with that threat against her brother. What lengths will these corporations go to in order to silence justice? The stakes just got deadly with Bradley Winters' murder. Could Judge Mitchell be getting framed for a crime she didn't commit? What will happen when she returns to court now that she's being implicated in a murder? Share this video if you're on the edge of your seat waiting to see how she'll fight back against these powerful enemies. The murder accusation hit with the precision of a carefully planned strategic strike. By morning, Judge Vanessa Mitchell found herself transformed from vindicated victim to prime suspect in a homicide investigation. Every major news outlet led with Bradley Winters' death, many featuring side-by-side images of the flight confrontation and crime scene photos that had somehow leaked to the press. Phoenix police detectives arrived at her hotel at 6 a.m. with a search warrant. "Judge Mitchell, We need to ask you about your whereabouts between 8 p.m. and midnight last night, Detective Ramirez said, his expression revealing nothing about his personal thoughts on the matter. I was at dinner with my law clerk Marcus Washington and Richard Coleman, the CEO of Airlines of America, until approximately 9:30 p.m. Then I returned directly to this hotel, where I discovered my room had been vandalized. Can anyone verify your presence at the hotel between 9:30 and midnight? Vanessa thought carefully. The security manager and staff who helped relocate me to this room, and there should be security footage. Detective Ramirez made a note. We'll check that. In the meantime, we need to examine your devices and personal effects. As they conducted their search, Vanessa received a text from Marcus. Phoenix PD just confiscated my phone too. They're saying your location data shows you were near Winter's apartment. That's impossible. What's going on? Before she could respond, Detective Ramirez emerged from the bathroom holding an evidence bag containing a man's watch. Do you recognize this item, Judge Mitchell? Vanessa stared at it in confusion. No, that's not mine. I've never seen it before. According to the airline's HR department, this watch was given to Bradley Winters last year for his 10th anniversary with the company. It has his initials engraved on the back. His partner added, it was found behind the toilet tank in your bathroom, along with these. He held up another evidence bag containing what appeared to be blood-stained latex gloves. This is absurd, Vanessa said, struggling to maintain her composure. Those items were planted in my room during the break-in last night. That's for the courts to determine, Judge. I think you understand how this works. By noon, the Judicial Ethics Committee had issued an emergency order forcing her recusal from the Tech Global case, citing extraordinary circumstances. Chief Judge Blackwell called with the news, his voice heavy with regret. Vanessa, my hands are tied. The committee voted unanimously given the severity of the allegations. You're being temporarily suspended from all judicial duties pending the outcome of both the ethics investigation and the criminal inquiry. Harold, you know this is a setup. They're framing me to derail the Tech Global case. I believe you, he said quietly. But belief isn't evidence, and the system has to work according to its own rules, even for judges. Especially for judges. When she tried to reach Richard Coleman for support, his office claimed he was unavailable indefinitely. Minutes later, Airlines of America issued a press statement. In light of the shocking developments regarding Bradley Winters' death, Airlines of America is fully cooperating with law enforcement. While we previously apologized to Judge Mitchell, based on video evidence regarding the initial incident, these disturbing new allegations require us to step back from any statements of support until the investigation is complete. The statement felt like a door slamming shut. As Vanessa packed her belongings, preparing to check out of the hotel at her own attorney's recommendation, she discovered that her call to Richard Coleman on the day of the flight incident had been recorded and leaked to the media. News channels were playing an edited version where her words, "This kind of discrimination needs serious consequences," and "I want him removed," were spliced together to sound threatening when taken out of context. By evening, Marcus arrived at her new location, a small hotel on the outskirts of Phoenix. His normally composed demeanor had been replaced with visible anxiety. Judge, 2 men approached me outside the courthouse today. They suggested I could avoid unnecessary complications in my career if I testified that you frequently expressed anger about Bradley Winters after the incident. His voice shook slightly. They knew details about my family, about my sisters, college dorm room number, about my parents' daily routine. They're trying to pressure me to turn on you. Vanessa felt a cold dread settling over her. Marcus, you should distance yourself from me. Your career, your family's safety, those have to come first. No, that's what they want. If everyone abandons you, their frame job becomes more believable. As they spoke, Vanessa's phone rang. It was her brother James in Detroit. Vanessa, there are people watching the house. Strange cars parked across the street for hours. Someone followed me to work today. What the hell is going on? Before she could fully explain, Agent Lopez called on the other line. Judge Mitchell, do not return to your hotel. Do not use your credit cards or phone. There's a warrant being prepared for your arrest. The evidence they're manufacturing is substantial and convincing. What am I supposed to do? Go on the run? That would only make me look guilty. At this point, looking guilty might be better than the alternative. I've seen what happens to people who threaten Tech Global's interests. Bradley Winters isn't their first cleanup operation, and Victor Reynolds has connections throughout federal law enforcement. Even my own supervisor has ordered me to drop my investigation. The implications were clear. If Vanessa surrendered to authorities, she might never get the opportunity to clear her name. I need time to gather evidence proving this conspiracy, Agent Lopez continued. But I can't protect you officially. You need to disappear until I can build a case strong enough to withstand their influence. As Vanessa considered this dire advice, a breaking news alert appeared on the hotel room television. The FBI had announced they were joining the investigation into Bradley Winters' murder, and unnamed sources within the Bureau described finding substantial electronic evidence linking Judge Mitchell to the crime. Most disturbing was the final line of the report. Authorities consider Judge Mitchell dangerous and potentially unstable based on recent behavior. Agent Lopez's warning suddenly seemed much more urgent. They're setting the stage to claim you. Resisted arrest or had a breakdown if anything happens to you in custody, she warned. Victor Reynolds recently hosted a fundraiser for the Phoenix Police Commissioner and the county attorney. This whole system is compromised. That night, as Marcus helped her gather essential supplies, Vanessa finally saw the full picture. Her entire world, the justice system she had dedicated her life to upholding, had been weaponized against her. Her reputation, her career, her freedom, and potentially her life were all being systematically destroyed because she had been assigned to a case that threatened powerful people. The conspiracy was far more extensive than she had imagined, reaching into law enforcement, the media, the airlines, and even the judicial system itself. As she prepared to flee, abandoning everything she had worked for, Vanessa realized that the truth about Tech Global went beyond financial fraud. A corporation with the power and reach to orchestrate this level of persecution must be protecting something far more sinister than cooking the books. Whatever Victor Reynolds was hiding, it was worth destroying lives to keep secret. And now, she was the primary target of his carefully orchestrated machine. The transformation from respected federal judge to fugitive happened with dizzying speed. At 3:47 a.m., Agent Lopez called with urgent news. The arrest warrant had been signed, and tactical teams were preparing to raid both Vanessa's temporary hotel and her home back in Michigan simultaneously. They're treating this like a high-risk apprehension, Lopez warned. Full tactical gear, flash grenades, the works. This isn't standard procedure for a white-collar suspect with no history of violence. Someone wants to create a spectacle or, worse. Vanessa had less than 20 minutes to flee. She grabbed only her most essential items. Some cash, a prepaid phone that Marcus had purchased, basic toiletries, and a change of clothes. Agent Lopez met her at a service entrance, dressed in casual clothes rather than her FBI attire. "My car is parked 2 blocks east. Stay in the shadows and move quickly." They had barely made it to the vehicle when they heard sirens approaching from multiple directions. As Lopez pulled onto the main road, 2 black SUVs with government plates sped past them toward the hotel. "Those aren't just local police," Lopez observed grimly. "I recognize the driving formation. That's a federal tactical team." They drove in tense silence until reaching the outskirts of Phoenix. "I've arranged a safe location about 30 miles from here," Lopez explained. "It's off the grid, no digital footprint. You'll be safe there for 24 hours while I gather evidence." As they approached a darkened gas station to refuel, gunshots suddenly shattered their rear window. Lopez swerved violently, then accelerated, her training instantly taking over. "Get down!" she shouted as more shots followed. Vanessa dropped to the floor as Lopez executed a series of evasive maneuvers, eventually losing their pursuers in a residential neighborhood. When they finally stopped in an abandoned warehouse parking lot, Vanessa noticed the blood soaking through Lopez's jacket. "You're hit," the agent grimaced, examining a deep graze along her upper arm. "It's not bad, but I need to get this treated." She handed Vanessa a small bag containing cash, a burner phone, and a worn road atlas with a location circled in red marker. Head here. It's a motel outside Flagstaff. Ask for room 17. The manager owes me a favor and won't ask questions. Vanessa stared at the wounded agent. What about you? You need a hospital. I have a contact who can patch me up discreetly. We can't risk a hospital. Not with every law enforcement agency in Arizona looking for you. They'll be monitoring emergency rooms. They switched to Lopez's personal vehicle hidden in the warehouse, and the agent dropped Vanessa at a bus station before departing. Alone for the first time since this nightmare began, Vanessa felt the full weight of her situation. Her face was likely plastered across every news channel in America. She purchased a ticket to Flagstaff with cash, keeping her head down and her newly purchased baseball cap pulled low. On the bus, a television mounted at the front was tuned to a news channel showing aerial footage of police surrounding her hotel. The headline banner read, "Manhunt underway for federal judge wanted in flight attendant's murder." The news anchor's voice carried throughout the quiet bus. Judge Mitchell is considered dangerous and possibly mentally unstable. Authorities advise the public not to approach if spotted. Vanessa pulled her collar higher, hyper-aware of other passengers occasionally glancing at the screen and then surveying the bus, as if mentally comparing faces. She exited 2 stops early and walked several miles to avoid potential surveillance at the Flagstaff station. By dawn, she had reached the motel. The elderly manager barely looked at her when she requested room 17, simply sliding a key across the counter without requiring ID or payment. Once safely inside the dingy room, Vanessa collapsed onto the bed mentally and physically exhausted. She allowed herself 4 hours of fitful sleep before forcing herself to assess her situation. The prepaid phone had only one contact programmed, Intuit, EC. When she called, a young woman's voice answered cautiously. "Judge Mitchell? Agent Lopez sent me your number. I'm Ellie Chen. We need to move quickly." 3 hours later, Vanessa met Ellie at a remote diner 20 miles outside Flagstaff. The young woman was in her late 20s, with sharp eyes and a wary demeanor. "I was your court reporter on the Dawson pharmaceutical case 2 years ago," she explained. "You probably don't remember me." Vanessa studied her face, recognition slowly dawning. "You were just an intern then." "Yes. You were kind to me when the defense attorney tried to have me removed for a minor transcription error. I never forgot that." As they spoke, the diner's television switched to breaking news. A police checkpoint had been established on Interstate 40, with officers examining vehicles for any sign of Judge Mitchell. "We need to move," Ellie said, leaving cash on the table. "I have a place where you'll be safe." Ellie's safe place turned out to be a small cabin owned by her family, tucked away in a wooded area miles from the nearest neighbor. "No one knows about this place except my grandmother, who owns it but never visits anymore." Vanessa found temporary refuge there, but her rest was short-lived. The next morning, a local news report showed footage of Ellie entering her apartment building in Phoenix. Somehow, they had connected her to Vanessa. "They're tracking everyone who ever worked with you," Ellie explained when she called. "I nearly got caught leaving my apartment. They had agents watching the building." Over the next 3 days, Vanessa was forced to constantly relocate, using disguises Ellie had provided and staying in increasingly obscure locations. She used only cash, avoided security cameras, and moved primarily at night. During a brief stop at a truck stop, she glimpsed a newspaper headline declaring her armed and dangerous, with instructions for the public to immediately report sightings. The article mentioned that authorities had issued shoot-on-sight orders. If she displayed any threatening behavior, Vanessa realized the trap being set. If law enforcement found her, they had been primed to perceive any movement as a threat, creating the perfect scenario for a justified shooting. While hiding in an abandoned hunting cabin, she managed to access the internet through a device Ellie had provided. She discovered multiple reports of other black professionals who had encountered Bradley Winters on flights, all describing similar confrontations, though none as severe as hers. The pattern was unmistakable, yet mainstream media wasn't connecting these incidents. Instead, news coverage had coalesced around a narrative of Vanessa as an entitled judge who had abused her power and ultimately murdered the whistleblower who had exposed her. In one particularly jarring moment, she watched Richard Coleman give a somber interview expressing his profound disappointment in her actions and offering funeral expenses for Bradley Winters' family. On her 7th day as a fugitive, Vanessa narrowly escaped capture when armed men in civilian clothes raided the motel where she'd spent the night. Only her decision to leave before dawn for a walk saved her from the tactical team that stormed her room with military precision. Watching from the cover of trees across the street, she recognized their movements and equipment as professional, not standard police procedure. These were private contractors, possibly the same ones connected to Tech Global Industries. As local, news later reported the raid as a police operation. Vanessa realized the terrifying truth. Whoever was hunting her had both law enforcement and private military resources at their disposal, and the line between them had completely disappeared. She was being pursued by a shadow force that operated with the full authority of the law, but none of its constraints. That night, hiding in the back of a long-haul truck Ellie had arranged for transport, Vanessa confronted the reality that she was now fighting not just for her reputation or freedom, but for her very survival. The basement of Ellie Chen's grandmother's house in a quiet suburb of Tucson became Vanessa's most secure haven yet. The modest home above remained unoccupied, its elderly owner now living in a nursing facility, giving no reason for authorities to connect it to Ellie or Vanessa. The basement had been converted into a surprisingly sophisticated command center. Multiple computer monitors lined one wall, while another held a complex evidence board connecting people, companies, and events with strings and notes. My hobby became cybersecurity after witnessing how evidence could be manipulated in court cases, Ellie explained as she set up secure communication channels. Now I freelance as a security consultant when I'm not court reporting. For the first time in weeks, Vanessa felt a glimmer of hope. Here, in this underground refuge, she might finally have the resources to fight back against the forces that had systematically destroyed her life. Ellie's technical skills proved invaluable as they began methodically gathering evidence. Using specialized tools and exploiting security vulnerabilities, Ellie managed to access Tech Global's internal servers. Corporate networks are never as secure as they think, she explained while navigating through encrypted files, especially when executives insist on convenience over security protocols. What they discovered was more disturbing than Vanessa had imagined. Tech Global had an entire department labeled Risk Management that operated more like a private intelligence agency. Documents revealed systematic harassment campaigns against potential whistleblowers, journalists, and regulatory officials who posed threats to the company's operations. "Look at this," Ellie said, pointing to a folder labeled Judicial Interventions. Inside were detailed profiles of dozens of judges who had presided over cases involving Tech Global or its subsidiaries. Each profile included personal information, family details, financial records, and potential pressure points that could be exploited. Vanessa's file was disturbingly comprehensive, containing information dating back to her college years. Most shocking was a document titled Operation Recusal that outlined the entire plan to remove her from the Tech Global case, including the flight incident with Bradley Winters as Phase 1 and a contingency plan if initial efforts failed. The document stopped short of explicitly mentioning murder, but referenced permanent solutions if all other measures proved ineffective. While Ellie continued mining data, Vanessa monitored news reports through secure channels. She discovered that several other Black professionals had begun coming forward with their own stories about Bradley Winters, but mainstream media outlets gave these accounts minimal coverage. When outlets did report on these testimonies, they were quickly countered by character witnesses, praising Winters and suggesting a coordinated smear campaign against the deceased flight attendant. "They're controlling the narrative completely," Vanessa observed. "Every time contrary evidence emerges, they bury it under new accusations or distractions." Through an encrypted messaging system, Vanessa reached out to Judge Raymond Washington, one of the few colleagues she still trusted implicitly. Raymond had been her mentor early in her career and had himself faced discrimination throughout his 30 years on the bench. After confirming his message was genuine through personal security questions, Raymond agreed to help. "I never believed any of these allegations," he wrote. "The pattern is too convenient, the evidence too perfectly arranged. This reeks of fabrication." Raymond connected Vanessa with Sofia Rodriguez, an investigative journalist known for exposing corporate corruption. Unlike mainstream media, Sophia was willing to look beyond the official narrative. Through careful, encrypted communications, Sophia revealed that she had been tracking similar cases across the country. "I've documented 17 instances in the past 5 years where black professionals who posed threats to major corporations were systematically discredited through manufactured scandals," Sophia explained. "The playbook is always the same: create a public incident, manipulate evidence, escalate to criminal allegations if necessary." Sophia had never been able to conclusively connect these cases to specific corporations, but the patterns were unmistakable. "The difference in your case is that they moved too quickly, made too many mistakes in their rush to remove you from the Tech Global case. That creates an opportunity to expose the entire system." Despite the risk to his own career, Marcus began secretly providing internal court documents that revealed irregularities in how the Ethics Committee had handled Vanessa's case. Evidence suggested that 2 committee members had received substantial consulting fees from companies connected to Tech Global shortly before voting on her suspension. Most damning was video footage Ellie managed to obtain from a security camera near a private airport in Phoenix. The footage clearly showed Alexander Pierce, Tech Global's board chairman, meeting with Bradley Winters 3 days before Vanessa's flight. The conversation couldn't be heard, but the body language and exchange of what appeared to be documents were highly suspicious. Through careful investigation of financial records, they discovered that Richard Coleman himself was likely being controlled through coercion rather than willing participation. Bank transfers showed that his son's expensive medical treatments were being funded through a foundation with direct ties to Tech Global, creating a powerful form of leverage. As Ellie explained, they don't need his willing cooperation when they can threaten his child's health care. Their investigation accelerated when Agent Lopez finally re-established contact through a secure channel. Her arm injury had been more serious than initially indicated, requiring extensive medical treatment that had forced her underground. "They're hunting me too now," she revealed. "My supervisor claimed I was suffering from paranoid delusions and placed me on psychiatric leave. When I continued investigating privately, someone broke into my home. I barely escaped." With Lopez's help, they began connecting their evidence to larger patterns of corporate interference in the justice system. Their work was interrupted one evening by a frantic call from Ellie's cousin, who reported seeing strange men asking questions around her apartment building. Hours later, as Ellie left to gather supplies, her car was forced off the road by an unmarked black SUV. Only her evasive driving skills and knowledge of backroads allowed her to escape what was clearly an abduction attempt. When she returned to the basement hideout, visibly shaken, Vanessa realized the danger had escalated yet again. "They're not just trying to discredit me anymore," she said grimly. "They're eliminating everyone connected to the investigation. We're running out of time." Incredible. Judge Mitchell's investigation is uncovering a conspiracy far bigger than anyone imagined. Comment number 1, if you're shocked by how deep this corporate corruption goes. Can you believe Tech Global has an entire department dedicated to targeting judges? Hit that like button if you think Ellie Chen deserves recognition for risking everything to help expose the truth. Would you have the courage to stand up against powerful corporations like Vanessa and her allies are doing? Subscribe now to see how they'll use this evidence to fight back against the system that betrayed them. The walls are closing in as their enemies get more desperate. Will they be able to expose the conspiracy before it's too late? Who do you think will be targeted next? Judge Raymond, Sophia the journalist, or loyal Marcus? And how will they release their evidence when the media is clearly compromised? Stay tuned for the next part of this shocking story, where the heroes finally start fighting back. After weeks of gathering evidence while constantly evading capture, Judge Vanessa Mitchell and her small team of allies were finally ready to mount a counteroffensive. Their first priority was establishing secure communications that couldn't be intercepted or traced. Ellie developed an encrypted messaging system routed through multiple international servers, making it virtually impossible to track. "We need to be strategic about releasing information," Vanessa cautioned during a secure video call with her allies. "If we dump everything at once, they'll bury it under new allegations or some manufactured crisis." Judge Raymond Washington agreed. "These people control major media outlets and have law enforcement connections. We need to be smarter than they are." Sofia Rodriguez suggested a carefully orchestrated approach. I have contacts at independent news organizations who haven't been compromised. We feed them specific pieces of evidence in a predetermined sequence, each one building on the last. We create a narrative that's too compelling to ignore. They began with the security footage showing Alexander Pierce meeting Bradley Winters, days before the flight incident. Sofia released it through 3 respected independent journalists simultaneously, along with documented connections between Pierce and Tech Global Industries. Within hours, the video had gone viral, forcing mainstream media to acknowledge its existence. Tech Global's stock price dropped 8% by market close. Next came evidence of Bradley's pattern of harassing black professionals on flights, with testimony from 5 other victims whose stories corroborated Vanessa's experience. These accounts directly contradicted the portrait of Winters as a dedicated professional that Airlines of America had promoted after his death. The carefully timed releases began generating public questions about the official narrative. Social media hashtags like Justice for Judge Mitchell and Just Tech Global Corruption gained traction. Several prominent civil rights attorneys publicly offered to represent Vanessa if she chose to surrender, challenging the portrayal of her as dangerous and unstable. FBI Director Christopher Sandoval, responding to mounting public pressure, announced an independent review of the evidence against Judge Mitchell, separate from the investigation being conducted by the Phoenix Field Office. Meanwhile, Judge Raymond filed formal motions challenging Vanessa's removal from the bench, citing irregularities in the Ethics Committee proceedings and evidence of external influence on committee members. His legal challenges created additional public scrutiny and forced the judiciary to address questions about potential corruption within its own ranks. As public sentiment began shifting, Vanessa received an unexpected communication through their secure channel. Richard Coleman wanted to meet. It's a trap, Agent Lopez warned immediately. He's been working with them from the beginning. Maybe, Vanessa acknowledged. But our evidence suggests he's being coerced through his son's medical care. If we could turn him, his testimony would be devastating to Tech Global. After extensive debate, they agreed to a carefully planned meeting with multiple layers of security precautions. Coleman would meet Vanessa at an abandoned manufacturing facility outside Tucson, with Ellie monitoring security systems, Lopez providing armed backup, and Judge Raymond and Sofia waiting separately to document whatever transpired. When Coleman arrived, he came alone as instructed, though Ellie's surveillance confirmed a vehicle with multiple occupants parked half a mile away, just beyond the perimeter they had established. Coleman looked haggard, with dark circles under his eyes and a nervous twitch that hadn't been present before. "They have my family," he said without preamble. "Not just controlling my son's medical care anymore. They're physically holding my wife and children at a compound owned by one of Pierce's subsidiaries. They call it protective custody, but it's hostage-taking." He showed Vanessa photos he had secretly taken showing his family under guard at what appeared to be a luxurious but isolated estate. "They've threatened to harm them if I don't continue cooperating. I'm supposed to be setting you up right now." His candor surprised Vanessa. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're right about Tech Global. What they're hiding goes beyond financial fraud. They've been systematically manipulating clinical trial data for their pharmaceutical division for years. People have died because of medications they knew were dangerous." Coleman's revelation aligned with fragments of information they had discovered in Tech Global's servers, but hadn't yet been able to verify. "If we help extract your family, would you be willing to provide testimony about Tech Global's operations and their campaign against me?" Vanessa asked. Coleman nodded without hesitation. "I'll give you everything I know. Just help me get my family to safety." Agent Lopez developed a tactical plan to extract Coleman's family from the compound, recruiting several former FBI colleagues who had become disillusioned with the Bureau's handling of corporate crime. Using Coleman's inside knowledge of the Isa Baoen security protocols and Ellie's hacking skills to disable surveillance systems, they launched a precision operation under cover of darkness. The extraction itself went smoothly until the final moments when perimeter alarms were triggered prematurely. As Coleman's wife and children were loaded into a waiting vehicle, security forces opened fire. In the ensuing chaos, Richard Coleman, placed himself between the gunman and his family's vehicle, taking multiple bullets to the chest. Lopez and her team managed to complete the extraction, but Coleman's injuries were catastrophic. As they raced toward a predetermined medical location, Coleman, knowing he wouldn't survive, insisted on recording a complete statement detailing everything he knew about Tech Global's operations, their systematic campaign against Judge Mitchell, and the broader pattern of corporate interference in the justice system. His deathbed confession, witnessed and authenticated by both a doctor and a retired judge Lopez had recruited, would prove to be the most powerful evidence yet against the corporate conspiracy. Richard Coleman died minutes after completing his testimony, his final act, a repudiation of the corrupt system he had reluctantly served. That night, as Vanessa watched the video of Coleman's confession, she felt a complex mixture of emotions. The man had been both victim and perpetrator, coerced, yet complicit. His sacrifice provided them with the ammunition needed to fight back, but the cost had been devastatingly high. "We need to make this count," she told her team. "Coleman died to expose this corruption. We can't let that be in vain." What they didn't realize was that Tech Global had already mobilized its most aggressive counterattack yet, one designed not just to discredit, but to permanently eliminate everyone involved in the growing exposure of their crimes. The day after Richard Coleman's death, the coordinated release of evidence packages to multiple federal agencies and trusted media outlets triggered an earthquake within financial markets. Tech Global's stock plummeted by 27% in a single day, as investors panicked over revelations about falsified pharmaceutical trials and systematic judicial interference. Trading was temporarily halted after circuit breakers were triggered by the precipitous drop. Alexander Pierce, Tech Global's board chairman, held an emergency press conference projecting calm confidence. "These allegations are entirely fabricated by a fugitive judge attempting to distract from her own crimes," he stated smoothly. "Tech Global Industries has always operated with the highest ethical standards, and we welcome any legitimate investigation into our business practices." Behind his polished facade, however, Pierce was orchestrating a scorched earth response. Within hours of the press conference, Victor Reynolds, Tech Global's CEO, disappeared from public view. His private jet filed a flight plan for a non-extradition country, but never arrived at the designated destination. Meanwhile, a specialized team of private military contractors, all former Special Forces operators now employed by a security firm, on Tech Global's payroll, received activation orders with a simple objective: locate and eliminate Judge Vanessa Mitchell and all associated conspirators. These actions were coordinated through a secure communication channel that Pierce believed untraceable, but Ellie's sophisticated monitoring systems detected the increased digital activity. "They're mobilizing everything," she warned the team. Multiple encrypted communications between Pierce's security detail and at least 3 separate tactical teams. "They're using military-grade encryption, but the volume alone tells me they're planning something massive." Vanessa and her allies had anticipated escalation and prepared contingency plans, but the speed and scale of Tech Global's response exceeded their expectations. At 2:14 a.m., the first assault came without warning. The safe house where they had prepared their evidence packages was raided by a tactical team that breached all entry points simultaneously, using thermal imaging to target occupants. Fortunately, heeding Ellie's warning, they had evacuated hours earlier, leaving behind only carefully planted surveillance cameras that now captured the militarized operation being conducted with the precision of a special forces raid. "Those aren't police or FBI," Agent Lopez observed as they watched the live feed from their new location. "Those are private contractors operating with shoot-to-kill authority." The tactical team, finding the location abandoned, methodically searched for evidence, downloading data from decoy devices Ellie had left behind containing traceable misinformation. Before departing, they planted incendiary devices timed to destroy the building and any remaining evidence. 20 minutes after the team's departure, the safe house erupted in flames that quickly consumed the entire structure. Local news reported it as an accidental gas explosion in an abandoned property. The next day brought devastating news. Sofia Rodriguez, who had been instrumental in releasing Coleman's testimony to her media contacts, was found dead in her apartment from an apparent suicide. A typed note claimed responsibility for fabricating evidence against Tech Global, Vanessa knew immediately that Sophia had been murdered. "She contacted me last night after distributing the files," she told the team, her voice tight with grief and rage. She was excited about the impact the story was already having. There's no way she would have taken her own life. Hours later, they lost contact with Ellie during what should have been a routine supply run. Her tracking device went offline near an industrial area outside Tucson. When she didn't arrive at the designated safe point, Lopez went to investigate and discovered Ellie's abandoned vehicle with signs of a violent struggle. Security camera footage from a nearby business showed her being forced into a black SUV by men in tactical gear. For the next 48 hours, despite their best efforts, they received no indication of Ellie's whereabouts or condition. Then, a video file arrived through their secure channel, showing Ellie bound to a chair, her face bruised and bloody. A distorted voice demanded that Vanessa surrender herself at a designated location within 6 hours, or the torture would continue. A live feed was established to prove Ellie was still alive, allowing them to watch helplessly as professional interrogators systematically worked to break her, demanding information about Vanessa's location and their remaining evidence. Despite excruciating pain, Ellie revealed nothing. "Don't come for me," she managed to gasp during a moment when her torturers stepped away. "They'll kill us both. Finish what we started." Before she could say more, the feed was cut. The psychological impact of watching Ellie's torture while being powerless to intervene was devastating for the remaining team members. Judge Raymond, who had been using his legal connections to file motions supporting Vanessa's innocence, was the next target. Rather than a direct assault, Tech Global operatives took a more subtle approach. Raymond received phone calls with recordings of his grandchildren playing in their school playground, followed by explicit threats that the children would disappear if he didn't publicly denounce Vanessa and retract his legal filings. Initially, Raymond refused to capitulate, but when his daughter reported an attempted abduction of his 7-year-old granddaughter, thwarted only by an alert teacher, he made the heartbreaking decision to protect his family. The next day, Judge Raymond Washington held a press conference where, his face a mask of controlled anguish, he formally distanced himself from the fugitive Judge Mitchell and expressed regret for his lapse in judgment in supporting her claims. Only Vanessa, watching the broadcast, noticed the subtle hand signal Raymond included in his statement, a private gesture they had established years ago to indicate coercion. With Sophia dead, Ellie captured, Agent Lopez wounded in a separate ambush, and Judge Raymond neutralized through family threats, Vanessa found herself completely isolated. Even Marcus, her loyal law clerk, had been forced into protective custody after an attempt on his life. Unable to communicate without monitoring, Tech Global's strategy was methodically eliminating every ally, every support system, every potential witness who could corroborate her claims. Public opinion, which had briefly shifted in her favor following the initial evidence releases, was being systematically redirected through coordinated media campaigns, questioning the authenticity of Coleman's confession and suggesting a vast conspiracy by Vanessa to frame Tech Global in retaliation for her exposure as a murderer. Alone in a decrepit storage facility on the outskirts of Phoenix, Vanessa contemplated her rapidly diminishing options. She had gone from respected federal judge to fugitive, from hunter to hunted, from a position of authority to complete vulnerability. The evidence they had so carefully gathered was now either destroyed or inaccessible, her allies eliminated or compromised. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm her, Vanessa's secure phone received coordinates for a meeting, along with a cryptic message: "Not all of Pierce's people are loyal. Some of us want out. Bring Coleman's full confession. Come alone or don't come." Every instinct warned of a trap, but with no alternatives remaining, Vanessa made her way to an abandoned warehouse complex miles from the city. The cavernous space, once used for manufacturing aircraft components, now stood empty except for rusting equipment and the echoes of her footsteps on concrete. As she reached the center of the main floor, light suddenly blazed from all directions, temporarily blinding her. When her vision cleared, she found herself surrounded by a dozen armed men in tactical gear, their weapons trained on her with unwavering precision. From the shadows emerged Alexander Pierce himself, impeccably dressed as always, a slight smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Judge Mitchell," How extraordinary to finally meet in person after you've caused my company so much trouble. Vanessa maintained her composure despite the overwhelming fear. Your company has caused trouble for itself, Mr. Pierce, through fraud, corruption, and murder. Pierce chuckled, the sound echoing through the vast space. Such dramatic accusations, but here we are. You, a disgraced judge wanted for murder, making claims no one will believe. And me, representing one of the most powerful corporations in the world, with the resources to ensure those claims never reach a courtroom. He gestured to the armed men surrounding them. My security team consists of former military specialists who have conducted operations the public will never know about. They have no qualms about adding one more to that list. As Pierce monologued about the extent of corporate power and the insignificance of individual resistance, Vanessa realized he was revealing the full scope of Tech Global's operations, detailing a sophisticated system for manipulating the judiciary, controlling regulatory agencies, and eliminating threats through both legal and illegal means. His arrogance in believing she would never leave the warehouse alive led him to confession after damning confession. You see, Judge Mitchell, the modern world isn't governed by elected officials or courts. It's run by corporations like mine that have transcended mere business to become power structures unto themselves. We don't just influence the system, we are the system. As Pierce continued his villainous exposition, Vanessa subtly surveyed the warehouse, looking for any possible escape route. Finding none, she prepared herself for the inevitable conclusion of this confrontation. Pierce finally ended his lecture with a theatrical sigh. And now, unfortunately, we must conclude our discussion. I've instructed my team to make this look like a confrontation with law enforcement, another case of a dangerous fugitive resisting arrest. A regrettable but necessary end to the Vanessa Mitchell story. He nodded to the tactical team leader, who raised his hand to signal the execution. In that moment of terrible clarity, Vanessa realized she had fought as hard as she could against forces too powerful and corrupt to defeat. The system she had dedicated her life to upholding had been thoroughly corrupted by money and power. Justice, in the end, had proven to be an illusion. As Pierce stepped back and the tactical team took aim, the warehouse was suddenly plunged into darkness. The distinctive sound of flashbang grenades echoed through the space, followed by the measured precision of coordinated gunfire. Vanessa dropped to the floor, covering her head as chaos erupted around her. When emergency lights flickered on moments later, she found the scene transformed. Pierce's security team lay incapacitated or surrendering to a tactical unit in FBI gear led by a recovered Agent Lopez. Alexander Pierce himself was being handcuffed, his expression of smug confidence replaced by stunned disbelief. "Sorry for cutting it close, Judge," Lopez said, helping Vanessa to her feet. "We needed him to keep talking long enough to get everything on record." The warehouse raid marked a stunning reversal in Vanessa's fortunes. As Agent Lopez helped her to a secure vehicle, she explained how the operation had come together. "After I was ambushed, I reached out to a small circle of trusted FBI colleagues who've been concerned about corporate influence in the Bureau. We formed an unofficial task force to investigate Tech Global independently. The team had been monitoring Pierce's communications and tracking his security team's movements, waiting for the perfect opportunity to catch him in an incriminating situation. We needed him on record admitting to the conspiracy. Your willingness to meet him provided that opening." Vanessa learned that Victor Reynolds had been apprehended while attempting to board a private yacht in San Diego Harbor, with millions in cryptocurrency and false identification documents. His planned escape had been thwarted by a coordinated effort between Lopez's team and Coast Guard intelligence that had been tracking the vessel based on information from Richard Coleman's confession. Most crucially, Ellie had been rescued from her captors during a simultaneous operation. Though severely injured, she had managed to activate an emergency tracking device embedded in her shoe during the abduction. She was now receiving medical treatment at a secure military facility. "There's something else you should know," Lopez said as they arrived at a safe house outside Phoenix. Ellie managed to broadcast Pierce's entire confession. She had set up a remote streaming system before she was captured, anticipating something like this might happen. "Every word Pierce said to you in that warehouse has been transmitted to secure servers and distributed to media outlets worldwide." Within hours, the Pierce confession had gone viral, impossible to suppress or discredit. News networks that had previously parroted Tech Global's narrative were scrambling to distance themselves as public outrage mounted. Footage of Pierce calmly discussing the murder of Bradley Winters and the framing of Judge Mitchell played on repeat across every platform. The following day brought a cascade of developments. The Department of Justice announced a comprehensive investigation into Tech Global Industries, its executives, and its business practices. The FBI publicly acknowledged Agent Lopez's unofficial investigation and formally incorporated her findings into multiple criminal inquiries. Most significantly for Vanessa, all charges related to Bradley Winters' death were officially withdrawn after forensic evidence conclusively linked the murder to 2 Tech Global security contractors who had been present during Pierce's warehouse confession. Additional evidence recovered from Pierce's encrypted communications revealed the elaborate plot to frame Vanessa, including instructions for planting evidence in her hotel room. As media coverage shifted dramatically, Vanessa emerged as a symbol of courage and resilience. Previously skeptical news anchors now praised her determination to expose corruption despite overwhelming personal risk. Civil rights organizations highlighted her case as an example of how power structures could be weaponized against Black professionals who threatened corporate interests. Sofia Rodriguez's murder was officially reopened as a homicide investigation, with evidence pointing to the same security team that had targeted Vanessa. Though she couldn't be brought back, her final reporting was published posthumously, detailing the broader pattern of corporate interference in the judicial system that she had been investigating for years. In a particularly satisfying development, Bradley Winters' family issued a public apology to Vanessa after learning the truth about his involvement with Tech Global. His sister revealed that Bradley had called her the night before the flight incident, expressing misgivings about a job he had been pressured to perform. The family released private text messages showing his distress over being manipulated into targeting a federal judge. 3 weeks after the warehouse confrontation, Vanessa made a triumphant return to the federal courthouse in Phoenix. Flanked by FBI agents and greeted by a crowd of supporters, she walked up the same steps she had ascended months earlier under very different circumstances. Inside, Chief Judge Harold Blackwell formally welcomed her back to the bench with a public acknowledgement of the injustice she had endured. The integrity of our judicial system depends on the courage of individuals willing to stand against corruption, even when that corruption infiltrates the very institutions designed to protect justice, Blackwell stated during the reinstatement ceremony. Judge Mitchell has demonstrated extraordinary courage and unwavering commitment to truth, at tremendous personal cost. The Judicial Ethics Committee unanimously dismissed all complaints against her and issued a formal apology for their role in her unjust suspension. 2 committee members resigned after the extent of their financial connections to Tech Global subsidiaries was revealed. When Vanessa finally returned to the courtroom, now presiding over the reconvened Tech Global case, the atmosphere was transformed. Lawrence Phillips had been replaced as lead defense counsel after his own ties to the conspiracy were exposed. His replacement offered no objections as the prosecution presented devastating evidence of financial fraud, endangering public safety. Through falsified pharmaceutical trials and obstruction of justice at the highest corporate levels. The jury deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts against Tech Global and its executives. Judge Mitchell's sentencing statement became widely quoted for its eloquence about corporate accountability. When immense wealth and power are used not to create but to corrupt, not to build but to destroy, not to advance justice but to obstruct it, the response of our legal system must be unequivocal and resolute. The days when corporations could operate as de facto sovereign entities beyond the reach of law must end. In the months that followed, Vanessa's experience catalyzed broader systemic reforms. Congress launched hearings into corporate influence in the judiciary, with Vanessa providing powerful testimony about the sophisticated methods used to compromise judges and manipulate legal outcomes. The Attorney General appointed her to lead a special judicial task force investigating patterns of corporate interference in the federal court system. As the task force's work progressed, dozens of other cases emerged showing similar tactics used against judges who posed threats to powerful corporate interests, particularly judges from minority backgrounds. Legislation was introduced to strengthen judicial independence and protection from external influence. For Ellie, whose technical skills and courage had been instrumental in exposing the conspiracy, recovery was gradual but steady. Her injuries from captivity required multiple surgeries, but she eventually returned to work with a new purpose, developing security systems specifically designed to protect judicial integrity from technological threats. Judge Raymond Washington, freed from the threats against his family after Pierce's organization was dismantled, became a vocal advocate for judicial security reforms. He publicly apologized for his forced denunciation of Vanessa and joined her task force as a senior advisor. Agent Lopez received a formal commendation for her actions, despite having operated outside official channels during parts of the investigation. Her experiences led to structural reforms within the FBI, designed to protect agents investigating corporate crime from internal interference. As for Alexander Pierce and Victor Reynolds, their trials became landmarks in corporate criminal prosecution. Both received substantial prison sentences, and the court ordered the largest corporate criminal penalties in American history against tech global industries. During a private moment at the conclusion of the sentencing hearing, Vanessa reflected on the extraordinary journey from that first confrontation on the airplane to this moment of justice. What had begun as a seemingly isolated incident of racial discrimination had exposed an entire system of corporate corruption that had infected the very institutions meant to check corporate power. While the personal cost had been enormous, the impact of her stand against these forces would resonate through the legal system for generations to come. 6 months after the sensational conclusion of the Tech Global case, Judge Vanessa Mitchell's life had reached a new equilibrium. Her judicial task force on corporate interference had made significant progress, identifying 37 federal cases where evidence suggested improper corporate influence on judicial proceedings. Their work had already led to the reversal of several controversial rulings that had favored major corporations under suspicious circumstances. The media narrative surrounding her had completely transformed. No longer portrayed as an angry black woman who had abused her position, she was now celebrated as a courageous whistleblower who had exposed fundamental corruption at the intersection of corporate power and the justice system. Several prestigious universities had invited her to speak about judicial independence, and a major publisher had offered a substantial advance for her memoir. On a warm Phoenix evening, Vanessa hosted a small celebration dinner for her closest allies from the ordeal. Ellie Chen, now walking with only a slight limp from her injuries, had become Vanessa's chief technical advisor on the task force. Marcus Washington had been promoted to a prestigious position in the Department of Justice, focusing on corporate accountability. Agent Lopez, recently named to lead a new FBI division investigating corporate influence in government institutions, completed the intimate gathering. The mood was light as they reminisced about their unlikely victory against seemingly insurmountable odds. "I still can't believe we pulled it off," Marcus said, raising a glass in toast. "To justice prevailing against all odds." As they clinked glasses, the restaurant manager approached their table. "Judge Mitchell, there's a call for you at the front desk. They say it's urgent regarding the Airlines of America matter." Puzzled, Vanessa excused herself. Airlines of America had undergone a complete leadership overhaul after the scandal, with Richard Coleman's posthumous testimony revealing extensive corruption throughout upper management. Jason Matthews, the new CEO, had been recruited from outside the industry specifically for his reputation for corporate ethics. Vanessa had met him briefly during congressional hearings, where they both testified about the need for structural reforms. The caller identified himself as Matthews' executive assistant. "Judge Mitchell, Mr. Matthews asked me to alert you to some concerning information. While reviewing archived communications during our ongoing internal investigation, we discovered a secured storage locker registered to Richard Coleman containing personal effects that weren't included in the official evidence." The assistant's voice lowered. "Mr. Matthews thought you should know immediately that there appears to be an encrypted thumb drive with your name on it. He's arranged for secure courier delivery to your office tomorrow morning." Returning to the table, Vanessa shared this curious development with her friends. "Probably just additional evidence against Tech Global," Lopez suggested. "Coleman may have created a backup we never found. The evening concluded warmly, with promises to reconnect after Vanessa had reviewed whatever Coleman had left behind. The next morning, the courier delivered a small package containing a thumb drive in a sealed evidence bag. Following security protocols, Vanessa had her task force's technical team verify it was free of malware before attempting to access the contents. What they found sent a chill through everyone involved. The drive contained a video recording of Richard Coleman, clearly made shortly before his death. His expression was grave as he spoke directly to the camera. "Judge Mitchell, if you're watching this, then my worst fears about the extent of the conspiracy have been confirmed. What you uncovered with Tech Global is merely the visible portion of a much larger system. Alexander Pierce and Victor Reynolds aren't the ultimate architects, but merely high-level operators within a network that extends far beyond a single corporation." Coleman's revelation was methodical and devastating. He explained that during his tenure as CEO, he had discovered evidence suggesting that dozens of major corporations across different industries were coordinating efforts to identify and neutralize judicial threats, sharing resources, tactics, and even personnel for these operations. "They call themselves the Consortium," Coleman explained, "a coalition of corporate interests that functions as a shadow governance system, ensuring that legal outcomes consistently favor their collective interests regardless of law or precedent." Most disturbing was Coleman's evidence suggesting that the consortium had strategically placed operatives throughout government agencies, including the Department of Justice, the FBI, and judicial administration offices. These embedded agents provided early warning of potential threats and could influence investigations or judicial assignments when necessary. As Coleman's video continued, he provided specific names, dates, and documented connections that supported his claims. The pattern he revealed was far more extensive and organized than anything they had imagined when focusing solely on Tech Global. The implications were staggering. If Coleman's information was accurate, the successful prosecution of Tech Global might have eliminated one node of the network, but left the broader system intact and operational. Vanessa immediately convened an emergency meeting of her task force, sharing Coleman's revelations and initiating verification protocols for his claims. Within days, preliminary investigation confirmed many of his assertions. Financial records showed consistent patterns of coordinated action among seemingly unrelated corporations. Personnel movements revealed a rotating cast of fixers who moved between different companies during periods of legal vulnerability. Most concerning were the connections Coleman had identified within government agencies, which preliminary investigations suggested were disturbingly accurate. As the task force expanded its investigation, strange incidents began occurring. 2 key administrative staff abruptly resigned without explanation. Requested documents went missing from secure storage. Internal communications about sensitive aspects of the investigation were leaked to the very corporations being investigated. Most troubling was the sudden reassignment of Agent Lopez to a remote field office, officially described as a routine rotation, but clearly intended to remove her from the investigation. One evening, as Vanessa worked late in her chambers, she received a plain envelope containing a single sheet of paper with the printed message: "This was just the beginning. Back off, or what happened before will seem like a minor inconvenience." The threat was followed by a detailed list of her current schedule, daily routines, and recent private conversations, demonstrating that despite all security precautions, she was once again under surveillance. Within weeks, other task force members began reporting similar intimidation attempts. Marcus discovered his apartment had been systematically searched. Ellie's secure communications were compromised. Judge Raymond reported being followed by unmarked vehicles. The pattern was unmistakable. They had disturbed something far larger and more dangerous than a single corrupt corporation. During an encrypted video conference with her core team, Vanessa faced the sobering reality of their situation. Coleman was right. We didn't end the conspiracy. We just exposed one manifestation of it. Now the larger network is mobilizing against us. Agent Lopez, speaking from her involuntary assignment in Alaska, was blunt in her assessment. They're better prepared this time. They've learned from the Tech Global exposure and won't make the same mistakes. The intimidation will be subtler, the pressure more difficult to document or prove. Despite these renewed threats, Vanessa remained resolute. We know what we're facing now. Last time, we were reacting to an attack we didn't understand. This time, we're prepared. They developed new security protocols, established multiple redundant evidence repositories, and created a dead man's switch mechanism that would release their findings to hundreds of trusted recipients if any team member was compromised. As Vanessa finalized preparations for congressional testimony about these broader findings, she received an unexpected invitation to meet with the new Airlines of America leadership about a corporate ethics initiative. Something about the wording triggered her instincts. The meeting location, the specific individuals listed as attendees, certain phrases in the invitation, all subtly echoed elements from the Tech Global operation. Comparing notes with her team confirmed her suspicions. The orchestration bore the hallmarks of consortium tactics identified in Coleman's files. Rather than avoid the obvious trap, Vanessa decided to accept the invitation, with extensive security precautions and contingency plans in place. The morning of her flight to the meeting, Vanessa approached the first-class cabin with heightened awareness. As she settled into her seat, she noticed the flight attendant's momentary hesitation upon checking her boarding pass, followed by a subtle glance toward another crew member. The interaction was nearly imperceptible, but reminiscent of that first fateful flight with Bradley Winters. As the flight prepared for departure, Vanessa received a text message from an unknown number. "Welcome to round 2, Judge. The game continues, but the stakes are higher." Rather than fear, Vanessa felt a surge of determination. She was no longer an isolated individual being targeted by mysterious forces. She now stood at the center of a growing coalition dedicated to exposing and dismantling the corrupt system that had nearly destroyed her. Looking out the airplane window as they ascended, above Phoenix, Vanessa contemplated the broader battle ahead. The victory against Tech Global had been merely the opening skirmish in what would clearly be a prolonged war against entrenched corporate power. The path forward would be dangerous, the odds still daunting, the enemy both powerful and largely invisible. Yet this time she began the fight with clear eyes, powerful allies, and the unshakable conviction that had carried her through the darkest moments of her ordeal. The system that had tried to destroy her had inadvertently created its most formidable adversary. As the flight attendant approached with an unreadable expression, Vanessa straightened in her seat, ready for whatever came next. The cycle was continuing, but this time she was prepared. The fight for the soul of the justice system had only just begun. This powerful story of Judge Vanessa Mitchell teaches us several profound lessons about justice, perseverance, and systemic corruption. First, it demonstrates how quickly discrimination can escalate from a seemingly isolated incident into a coordinated campaign designed to destroy someone's life and career. What began as a flight attendant's racist treatment revealed a vast conspiracy of corporate power undermining judicial independence. Second, the story highlights how racism is often weaponized as a tool by powerful interests. Bradley Winters' discriminatory behavior wasn't just personal prejudice. It was deliberately deployed as the opening move in a calculated strategy to discredit a respected judge who threatened corporate interests. Third, we see the critical importance of allies in fighting injustice. Vanessa couldn't have exposed the truth alone. It took a diverse coalition: Ellie's technical skills, Marcus's loyalty, Judge Raymond's influence, Agent Lopez's tactical expertise, and even Richard Coleman's eventual courage to overcome seemingly insurmountable odds. Fourth, the narrative reveals how systems meant to protect justice can be corrupted. The same institutions that should have protected Vanessa, law enforcement, the media, the Judicial Ethics Committee, were weaponized against her, demonstrating how deeply power and money can compromise our societal safeguards. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, this story reminds us that fighting for justice is rarely a single battle, but rather an ongoing war. Even after victory against Tech Global, Vanessa discovered the fight had just begun. True justice requires vigilance, courage, and a willingness to stand firm even when the forces arrayed against you seem overwhelming. What moments in this story resonated most with you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination that seemed orchestrated rather than random? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you and you believe in standing against injustice, please like and subscribe for more powerful narratives that expose uncomfortable truths about our society. Remember, awareness is the first step toward change. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and may we all find the courage to stand firm against injustice, no matter how powerful the opposition.